Hello, and welcome to Week 5, Unit 1 of Application Development for SAP Business by Design. In this unit, we're going to look at embedded components. Now, we've already seen ways to create and enhance our own custom UIs, as well as enhance standard UIs using the Extensibility Explorer. Now we're going to look at embedded components. An embedded component is a reusable UI, usually a piece of UI, not a full floor plan necessarily, that you can embed in other UIs. We have many standard reusable embedded components, things for attachments, which you'd see as a document list, or for note fields, so text collections, and many other different embedded components. We can also create our own embedded components, a custom screen that we've built, and then we can embed that in any other floor plan that we want to, whether it's custom or in standard, as long as there's a place in the Extensibility Explorer for it. So we will use these for a number of different reasons, and we're going to go ahead and create our own today to embed a tab on the sales order OIF screen. So let's go ahead and look in the studio. So I'm logged in here to the SAP Cloud Application Studio with my development user. I want to go up to the Repository Explorer real quick to show you in the reuse UIs the embedded component area here. So this already shows a lot of the standard embedded components that are available to us to reuse in our screens. You can see that there is, for example, the document list, which is used for attachments. If you looked in the sales order OIF screen, you'd see that they're actually using the same embedded component there. There are ones for notes and many other ones, text editing, feeds, image panes, all kinds of stuff here. So feel free to look through this and try something out, and if you need to use something, it's available there. And then you can, and as I said, you'll see in the Extensibility Explorer how you can add this in either to a standard screen, or if it's in your own screen, you can just place it in, and then you just have to take care of the data binding. So I've extended the sales order object here. I have a couple new fields I added, external status and external changed on date. And what my scenario is I want to be able to have a new tab on the sales order OIF where I show these extension fields. Now this is an extension of the sales order object itself, and the reason I'm going to use an embedded component is because I want a new tab, a whole new tab to show this info. If I wanted it somewhere existing, I wouldn't necessarily need an embedded component. I'm going to use the sales order object here, but I could very easily use a custom object like our bonus plan, if we had sales order ID on there somewhere, to be able to load that and show that within the screen as well. For now, we're going to use sales order, and I'm going to go ahead and open the, actually I'm going to go ahead and say new item, and I'm going to say extensions and embedded component, and I'm going to say sales order EC. And this is going to create a new embedded component for me, and you'll see it's just going to be a blank screen, just a simple empty canvas for us. Click on the right thing here, and I'll be able to now design this how I want it to. And for now, in this case, I'm not so much worried about how it's going to look. I'm really more worried about, what I really want to show you is how do you do the binding and be able to get the data to load correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first set up my data model, and I'm going to have the data model of my object tied to sales order, and let's do the binding here at the root. And I'm going to bring in my extension fields from the sales order here. We're just going to show these two fields for now. It's going to be a very simple screen. And if I go to the Designer tab, let's open up here the BO browser and data model. And I should be able to see my external status and external change date. Yeah, these fields here are now, they're the ones that I created. I can modify the text. So let's say this is external info. Maybe I have a system where I have some similar sales orders there that I want to pull some external, the info from those external orders. And I populate these fields through that info, or maybe I give them here so that somebody can manually enter them. So let's go ahead and just clean up these labels really quick. Okay, So this is all my embedded component's going to look like for now. So now we need a way to be able to pull in the info to be able to show. So I'm going to do a few different things here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a data structure and a data field to that structure. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this to byd1. And what's going to happen is from the main sales order OIF floor plan, there's an output called the public output, which will pass out the ID and the UUID of the sales order. Now we want to take that into our embedded component and use that to, again, load the sales order to be able to show this info. So to do that, obviously, when we pass data, we're going to use outports and imports in this case. And I'm going to create a new import. And I'm going to have one parameter here, and that's going to be bound to this new field I just created, this ID_in. So that way, when I do my binding between the parent floor plan and my embedded component, I can have a place to store that ID as it's passed through. So now that I have the ID, I need some way to actually populate the actual instance of the sales order. To do this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new event. And let's say new event. And I'm going to say this is the load event handler. And I'm going to go ahead and do a BO operation here, a read operation. And it's going to be on the sales order. And let's go ahead and say that I'm going to do this on the alternative key, which is the ID. And this will be the ID that's passed in. And then it will be able to bind it to my object. Now this will take care of the reading and loading that I need to. I'm going to go ahead and set these two flags to true as well. This is really important. If I don't have these, it's not going to trigger the import correctly. So this now should take care of loading the actual instance. I have a place to display the data. Now all I have to do is just go ahead and add my embedded component. So I'm going to go to the Configuration Explorer. Once it's active, there we go. And let's go ahead and open the sales order UI. Now this is under CRM and SOC. If I wasn't sure, I could always use the search at the top to try and find sales order. And here we go, sales order OIF ECO. Now I could try and find a place already that exists on an existing tab and add my embedded component there. But like I said, I want a new tab, and thankfully on the sales order OIF, they have an anchor that will allow me to do that. So I'm going to go to the Extensibility Explorer, of course, and there's this undefined anchor at the top. And this is actually for the tab strip along here. And you'll see if I say Add View with Embedded Component, it asks me for a tab title. So I'm going to say External Info. I need to tell it what the embedded component is. So let's go ahead and open my embedded component. Here's my folder and my embedded component that I just created. And let's go ahead and we will copy the same name into this for now and bind. Now, as I mentioned, there is a public output here. And really all I need is some output that has an anchor which will provide the info that I need. So for now, let's go ahead and do the import. And we can bind those. Say OK and apply. Now really quick before I activate, let's go ahead and look here. You can see there's the public output. If I go down to the root here, like select it, and you can see it's passing the root ID. And so this is how I could go and confirm what it was. Now this in case it's only passing the ID. In some cases you'll see a UUID and ID, maybe just a UUID. I can confirm now that it is the ID for me. So I'm happy with that. That's what I built my floor plan to expect. If this was passing a UUID, I could always go back and change my embedded component to load, not using the alternative key, but the actual key, or the UUID in this case. The UUID is always the kind of global key of an object. So while that's activating, let's go ahead and load the application here. And I should be able to log in with my sales user. They will have access to the sales order floor plan. And let's say sales 02P. And if I go to not service orders, but sales orders, and we'll just take any sales order for now. and this is going to load. Now, any of these shouldn't have data yet because we haven't populated, but maybe we had already had populated data through an external integration, or just to see what's there. Let's actually have this filter by my open orders. And we'll take this order. And now I should see in the view all, the edit case, my new tab. We have done this now in the sales order. You could use it in other screens. If you're trying to add it to an embedded component to another screen and you don't find an anchor, that a place that allows you to add an embedded component, you can always request that it be updated to have one. Just file an incident based on the info of what the screen is, what your scenario is, describe what you're trying to do, and then hopefully development will provide that, or they'll give an answer as to why they wouldn't if they decided not to. Here's my external info screen. This should now show my fields, and then I can maintain my info and be able to work with my floor plan. So this is just a simple embedded component that we created. We could obviously do something a lot more intricate. We could also have it load a table. We could have it fire a query. The main important thing between the two is that we get some data in from the parent component, ideally, and then we use that to trigger the load of data or some process in our embedded component. From there, it's really up to you. You could fire some kind of action on an object. You could just let the object load as we did and show the data. It's really up to you. We can, as I mentioned, use document list and the notes to embedded components to be able to have that functionality within our object. So if, there's two things called dependent objects, which are for notes and attachments. The only two dependent objects that are available to us in the SAP Cloud Application Studio. And I can create nodes for the notes and attachments using these dependent objects, and then bind them to these special embedded components that then gives me the same kind of notes and attachments functionality that I see in the standard screens. And so we can use that and utilize that if we need to, if we have the decision to. And if you remember, when we generate our OAFs, it actually creates tabs for those to try and encourage us to do that if we are using an OAF. But we've done here is just taking a standard object and giving some extensions, and like we said, we wanted to show it on a new tab, so we created the embedded component to be able to do that, and then embed that as a new tab. So that is embedded components. That is the end of this unit. Thank you very much.